I'm Ricky.
And I'm Joe, and this is Beer and Broadband, the Beer and Broadband podcast. Man, I just completely fumbled that. But this is the Beer and Broadband podcast, season 8, episode 9, and it's scheduled to come out on June 9th, 2025. So we're just going to hop right into it. Today we have a really interesting beer. I've had it just yesterday, as a matter of fact, with another friend. But it's the Deep River Strawberry Shortcake Blonde Ale. It's a refreshing blonde ale with light biscuit aromatics sweetened with strawberry puree and milk sugar. And it's 6.2% ABV.
Yeah, this one's really good.
Yeah.
It's like jamming, and it's 100% right. It's a little bit... I think biscuit was the place I was struggling with. It's like, it doesn't really taste like cake. It tastes more like a graham cracker, but I can see that, like a short biscuit.
Yep.
You know, really jammy from the strawberry. Very, creamy, I guess, from the milk sugar. From the lactose, I guess, they put into it. It's good.
Yeah. It is. So, strawberry shortcake, that was a very sharp S. Whiskers. Strawberry shortcake, it is a very creamy... And strawberry is a fairly light flavor, not fake strawberry, but real strawberry is a fairly, and this is real strawberry flavor, so it's like light fruit, has that sweet and jammy kind of mouthfeel, and then on top of that, it has that bit of biscuit or short thin cake kind of flavor to it. I think overall they kind of nailed what they were going for here.
I think they did too. It's a really light, good sipping beer.
Yes.
I can definitely see you sitting outside like this. I'm not sure with the flavor profile. I'd want it like a pool or a beach, just because it's a little bit more comforting than that, I think. But yeah, sit on your patio, have some friends over, drink one or two of these. That's a pretty good evening.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not super alcoholic. It's 6.2% ABV. So as compared to some of the other beers that I make or that we drink you could have 2 or 3 of these and you're still fine.
Yeah.
And especially if you're sharing with somebody like we are today, it's really a good thing to sit down, drink, talk about. I mean, that's kind of what I did yesterday, right? Just going over. I didn't expect it to be this good. Now, Deep River makes good beers. They don't make my favorite beers.
Yeah. Even then, this doesn't exactly nail exactly what I would say is your beer.
Right.
This is a lot closer to what I look for in a beer. Just something a little fruity, something light.
Well, but it's got complex flavors. And generally, that's why I like darker beers, is because they have complex and interesting flavors. It's not just because I like darker beers. It's because a lighter beer, even like a hoppy beer, often is very one note. So IPAs, stuff like that. When I get an IPA that is more complex, even though I don't particularly love that beer, I tend to kind of savor it and explore it a little bit more, even though I'm not oh man, this is the best beer I've ever drank or anything like that. This is kind of hitting up in that category of I can sit here while I'm talking and taste different flavors on my tongue as different parts of it are coated by what's left in my mouth.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of surprised, because that's a little bit different than what Deep River normally does. So this is a more complex beer. It reminds me a little bit more of a wine or a really interesting cider or something like that. Just something they hit here is the perfect amalgamation. If more beers were like this that were lighter beers, I would probably drink more light beers.
Gotcha. Yeah, which I can see that to a certain extent. It is, especially in a lighter beer, harder to balance a lot of very powerful flavors, where what they've done here is just balance a bunch of very light flavors.
Yes.
It's a very mild strawberry, it's a mild, kind of like short biscuit. It's very nice. Even the creaminess is very mild. It's not like a milk stout in terms of that really luxurious mouthfeel. It's just very smooth, and it just feels like there's a little bit of fat on your tongue.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me of remember when we went to the Science of Wine and we went to that we paid for that extra tasting class beforehand, and they gave us the cheese with the wine pairings. There was one of the wines that was really fruity, but when you ate the cheese, it gave you this very different experience with it.
Yeah.
And like kind of brought back down some of the fruitiness of the wine while bringing up like some fatty, you know, like almost milky kind of flavors. Kind of, not exactly, but reminds me a bit of that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I think about that class all the time
And me too.
because of how good that cheese was.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the wine. It's just like, man, whatever that hard cheese was they did, the one that like just pretty much melted in your mouth once you got it, was so good.
Oh yeah, it was a Gouda.
It was something like that. Yeah.
I think it was. It was either a Gouda or a Parmesan.
I know I went to the store. He said he bought it at, and they were out, and then I never looked into it again.
Yeah.
But it was phenomenal.
Yes, it was. I still try to find cheeses that give me some of those experiences. Every now and then I'll find like some good goat cheese or something like that. But I still haven't found anything that's quite like that hard cheese was that you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know the name of the farm right off the top of my head, but a lot of the local farmers market carry something like Blue Moon Creamery or something like that, which is a local cheese place, which those are phenomenal. I've never had a hard cheese from them, but they do a lot of like goat cheeses and bries and stuff like that are very good.
The little mozzarella.
I've never seen any mozzarella for them, but that doesn't mean they don't make it. Most of what I see is they've got. I think there's also Carolina Creamery might be another one.
Yeah, Carolina Creamery and Blue Moon both but Blue Moon sells these little mozzarella and cheddar wax ball things that you can get that are like basically the cheese with wax over them that are and that's really good. Like I love it. It's one of my favorite things to get and just snack on.
There you go.
You know, it's all sealed up perfectly in the wax. Never goes bad. It's just great. And you can let them age a little bit if you want to. So let's talk about the return of physical buttons in cars and how I think what consumers knew instinctually and designers just don't want to hear, but the cars that some manufacturers are putting out are starting to come back to have buttons like that. The Slade that we talked about the other day.
Yeah.
It's got physical buttons. It's got physical knobs for the air control, physical buttons for the windshield wipers and stuff like that. Versus in a Tesla, you know, all that stuff's touchscreen.
Yeah, it's all digital now. Which is very interesting to see this kind of as a topic, because I do think we talked about this earlier in the season, maybe. Not this season, last season. I know I've talked to you about it not too long ago. Man, I just want like a physical AC knob, you know. It was a really interesting article. I actually really, you know, not that I ever don't recommend listeners read the articles after the podcast, but I really liked this one because it did take it from a direction that I hadn't thought of, which was safety. You know, we talk a lot about like, oh, it's just, I don't like it. It's more prone to like eventual problems. It's harder to fix when there is a problem. But it was interesting to read the fairly detailed like statistics, and they had some charts in there for it of just like, hey, you know, very common things like turning your headlights on and stuff like that. Having to mess around in a digital panel is a lot more distracting, is a lot more dangerous than just having a button you can flick.
It definitely is. I mean, so back in my previous life when I did law enforcement and everything like that, the ability to do anything while you were driving had to either be rote memory, or it was so distracting it was considered to be on par with something like drinking and driving or being sleepy while driving or something like that. Even like using a phone and talking on the phone when you had to like hold it up to your head or something like that because you had to think about holding it up was just distracting enough that it was on par with that stuff. And so like that's the same thing with like using like a screen or something like that when it's in front of you. Even though we've changed those laws to accommodate for things that manufacturers are making, the statistics were back then that it was just as dangerous.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a pretty dangerous thing that we're doing and trend that we've had just for like some sort of style or having like this kind of concept. It reminds me of a lot of my wife was having nails put on and you know, those fake nails that sometimes people get put on to you know, make their nails a little bit longer or something like that. She's going to a wedding. She wants to have those nails put on just so she looks really pretty. Yeah. But what she found is she can't zip up her pants with them on.
Oh, gotcha.
So like if she tries to like, you know, grab the zipper, she ends up popping a nail off. If she and it's a weird problem to have, but this is the exact same sort of problem. It looks great, it's beautiful, it's not functional at all. It is just, buried deep down inside the ability to turn off the speed on the windshield wipers to change it, or to change the lights so that they're at a certain dimness or something like that. All that stuff is kind of like you need to be able to manage that in the moment, not in like a sitting position when the car's not driving.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we've turned this into, is that you have to interact with it, or you're having to do it while you're driving down the road, and that's super dangerous.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that some manufacturers are going back to having physical buttons. And the episode that you're talking about is the one where I put the stereo in.
Okay.
Because we were talking about like how like being able to replace the stereo is really nice, because then I don't have to have like the touchscreen stuff.
Yeah,
and I still use my physical buttons on my steering wheel and stuff like that. And you were like, yeah, I prefer that, because not having a physical button, or maybe we talked about it since then, but we definitely did talk about it during that podcast.
Yeah. What was that? Was that early this season, or was that into last season?
I think it was into last season.
Okay. You can tell now who does the scheduling. I just show up and drink beer and talk.
Yeah, putting the dirty secrets of the podcast out. Yeah, so I mean, if you haven't listened to that episode, you should go back and listen to it. I think it was a pretty good one. We talked about where I put a stereo in my car, and like how it took an older car and brought it up to make it feel very much like a newer vehicle, with a lot of the newer features that a vehicle would have.
Yeah.
Including like CarPlay and Android Auto and stuff like that. One thing this kind of reminds me of, it's a little bit off topic, but so there was this self-hosted podcast that was put on by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's another thing I like to listen to, and they talk about like how to self-host stuff, how to like do like your own hacks, how to like have like a mobile computing space in your vehicle, or like something like that. And they just ended, which they've been going on. They're a little bit younger than our podcast. Ours is what, like 9 years old now. It's getting close to 10.
Gosh, yeah, that's weird to think about, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's either we're at 10 or we're over 10. I'll have to go back and look. We might be over 10, but we're like somewhere in that range. And I know like whenever it comes up, I'll like put out there that we're 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
But their podcast was very informative, because they would talk about like, hey, you can get this Docker container or this. It's one of the ones that I, would like listen to. I'm really considering like switching from Plex because of some of the weird stuff that they're doing. I'm going to wait to talk about that until after I see where things go.
Yeah.
But Plex is really not doing some things that I appreciate right now.
Oh, that's no good. Yeah, I'm completely out of the loop, so that'll be a fun episode.
Yeah, probably at the beginning of the second half of this season, we'll talk about it. I just want to wait for things to die down a little bit, like see actually what is happening, not just what people are like kind of like reacting to, but more just like, all right. And like sometimes they have takes on things that I don't necessarily agree with, like there is this operating system that Linus Sebastian from Linus Media Group backed, called Hex OS. That's like a NAS operating system. They kind of just like poo-pooed it, like it wouldn't be like a good thing, or it wouldn't do anything good or anything like that. And they thought it was more of like a cash grab. And I was there, and it didn't really like strike me as a cash grab.
Gotcha.
It seemed more like, like these people really believe in this product, and they wanted to take, the awesomeness of something like ZFS that's built into either FreeBSD or built into Linux itself, and be able to bring that forward into something that would be more user-friendly, like NAS software from, I don't know, one of the big NAS companies, QNAP, or one of them, Aces Store, all them. They all have like their own kind of proprietary Linux front ends for things. Now I'm comfortable getting into the command line and doing stuff like that, but somebody like, I don't know. I mean, even like one of our friends that's a little bit more techie, I don't know that they would be as comfortable getting into some of that stuff and like really digging into some of those settings and like, you know, making their pools a little bit more optimized and stuff like that. I think that they might have problems there. So, anyways, I don't think it was a cash grab. So, all to say, while warts were there, I really felt like it was a great podcast.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't listened to it, you should go back. Like, anybody should go listen to it. Self-hosted. You can find it on YouTube or any of the other podcasting places. And they're really into open source and stuff like that, which is something I'm very passionate about. So anyways, physical buttons coming back. Self-hosted went away. Trade-off.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pearson getting hacked.
Yeah. It's always happening. What is this now? I think maybe multiple. Is multiple this season? Been multiple this calendar year. The last 12 months. We've talked about some other places that have been hacked.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere.
It is.
You can't avoid it nowadays. This one was maybe a little bit more avoidable than others.
Mm-hmm.
Credentials being stored in places they probably shouldn't have been, or tokens.
Yeah, it was tokens.
So, still though, they're always looking. They're just waiting for you to slip up.
Yeah, and the moment you do, somebody's going to like grab your stuff. And according to Pearson, which I don't know that this is necessarily true, legacy customer data was exposed. But what exactly is legacy customer data?
Yeah, that just means old customer data.
Yeah.
Which, those are still your customers.
Right.
You still have their data.
Exactly.
That doesn't really... Especially because I think, in all honesty, if Pearson's got your data, unless you're like new into... Well, not even career, because they also do stuff like...
They do schooling stuff.
Yeah,
that goes back to like high schoolers.
Exactly. I'm trying to think, when you don't get your high school diploma, you go back
GED.
and get GED. There we go. Everyone you say GDE, and I knew that wasn't right. Yeah. So like a lot of people are in there, and like I haven't taken a Pearson test in a while, but I'm probably considered a legacy customer, but I've still got my data in there because I've not had to get certifications and stuff like that. So it's not. I was a little distasteful of that. I didn't like this idea of, well, because you gave us the data a long time ago, it doesn't matter. Though I guess to maybe a certain extent, it would matter what data it was, but probably not that much.
I believe that it was some pretty significant data, like emails, addresses.
Yeah, emails, addresses, stuff like that don't change super often. Even if they do, there's stuff you can still use to find people.
Yep.
It would have been a bigger stink if it was payment information, but payment information might be one of those few things that I can see of, well, it was legacy information.
Yeah.
Like if my debit card from 10 years ago got leaked, well, it's already expired. Like something like that maybe. But then this wouldn't have been like a more casual article. People would be up in arms because customer financial data got released, and that's when you got to start doing the credit reports and all that stuff.
Yeah, it kind of would have been more akin to the credit agency hacks that happened.
Yeah.
While like was it TransUnion? I think
it was something like that. Yeah. It's been all of them now at this point. I think.
I don't think all the credit agencies have been hacked. I think there was two. I think one of them still.
There's only 3 big ones.
I know,
so
but I think one of them.
Yeah.
I think two.
Maybe one's still holding on strong.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. Every company has problems.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to criticize. I was actually. All right, so this is a bunny rabbit trail. Whoa, hitting the mic, causing problems. I'm sneezing. This is
just throw the whole episode out.
Might as well just start all over.
Just fill a beer on the mic real quick.
Yeah, just throw it on the USB interface.
Oh gosh, ASMR though. What would like a foamy beer sound like going over a microphone?
I don't know.
I don't want to test it, but
you could possibly do that if you have a underwater mic.
Well, I was thinking more like you get a little bit of beer on something that has like a really big whatever the little fuzzy thing at the end of these are called.
Oh yeah, pop screen.
Pop screen.
Yeah.
Because it is like you can have the foaminess, but it's not like damaging the mic yet. But also like someone's done it. I'm just going off on a tangent. I'm sure I can YouTube this right now.
You probably
and someone
can.
has dipped a microphone in beer before.
Well, but you could put one of these on an underwater mic.
That's true.
Yeah. so it would work, and just see what it sounds like. Anyways, so talking about this, like I know we talk a lot about like negative stuff on here, but generally, whenever I'm thinking about stuff or I'm thinking about these things, I mean, even like the self-hosted podcast, I generally don't go first to like this is a negative thing about this, right?
Yeah.
So like with Pearson, the first thing I thought when this happened, or like any other company, is, oh yeah, well, I mean, probably some data at rest and probably some this and that. Same thing with like TransUnion or like one of those other things. I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. I'm not like trying to make excuses for anybody, but then like looking into it, I'm like, oh, that's not as good as I hoped it would be.
Yeah, I think that is maybe the takeaway is I think this happens so often now it's getting kind of normalized, but then also sensationalized at the same time. So like when it comes to news articles. So yeah, it is hard to tell when it's like, okay, there was a problem. How much fault is with the company versus like, did they just get really unlucky somewhere? Like you don't see it in the news too often. One, probably because it's not as common, and two, probably because maybe there's like very big ongoing like investigations that prevent some communication on stuff. But like you could kind of be doing everything right, and what you get is just like a disgruntled employee.
Yeah.
Like someone who had access to the database because their job required them to have access to the database. It's not like it was a bad permission. Just leak some data. That's bad. Obviously, that's customer impacting. It's a little hard to say maybe the company was at fault for that. But in something like this, where it's like you've got tokens in Git repos, not as good.
Yeah, not as good, especially when those Git repos are public Git repos.
Yeah.
It's not even like they're private. I mean, you can have private Git repos that only like certain people have access to. That's like, I mean, if you've got a token in there, it's not good, but that's not as bad.
Yeah, that's true.
You should have that in some vault somewhere, but at least it's in a private Git repo. In a public Git repo, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Like, what? My brother in Christ, are you okay? Like, what have you done?
Yeah, one of the things, maybe it was an article, I don't remember. Was it intentional? Like, did someone do a bad push and before they could get it down, it got grabbed? Or
no, it looks like it was just in there.
Just chilling?
Yeah.
Dang.
There's just something that was there. I don't know for sure. It could have been a bad push. And that would be a mistake. So like that's one of those things that's like catastrophic and a bad mistake and could actually like have some negative impacts on people. So there should be some sort of like
like you should have immediately revoked that token, kicked off any active sessions under that token. Like there's things you could have done. But at least then it's like we made a mistake. We knew we made a mistake. We tried to fix it but didn't do a good job fixing it.
Yeah.
This is just it's kind of like the software development equivalent to like a sticky note on your computer.
Yeah. A sticky note on your computer would be more secure though, because they'd have to get into your office.
That's true. And you're live streaming your monitor on Twitch 24/7.
That would be more like it. Yeah. All right. So something that's a little bit more positive. Sometimes technology brings us something that's really great. And while I'm sure that someone in this dystopian world that we're living in right now will turn this into evil soup, right now it seems pretty awesome. Bioprinting for animals and humans. So being able to actually like put things inside of our bodies, like you have a messed up arm or like a damaged thing, instead of having to go in and have this invasive surgery, being able to within your body inject stuff into you that bioprints itself into a repaired ligament or a suture for your torn muscle or artery or something like that, or even like bones that are broke, being able to like tie them together without having to put like really painful pins into them and stuff. This is like awesome. It's like the future that we've all envisioned from sci-fi, right? Like you get damaged and they just come in, they make you a new arm, you regenerate you, kind of deal. Not quite to that extent, but like it's that sort of like thing, right? So,
yeah, the idea that we're going to be taking material and sculpting it inside a person non-invasively is pretty huge. And there's been a lot of things happening in that space. Like I remember a couple of years ago watching a little research video. They had basically found they'd come up with this. I'm going to butcher this basically like putty almost that they could put around a broken bone, and it acted as a very good scaffolding for bone growth. So, like, you know, hey, we can put this material on you, and your bone is going to grow back way faster. It's going to grow back way better because we supported it. And, like, even before we get to things like, you know, oh, your kidney's bad, can we, like, repair your kidney via this, like, special ultrasound technology with, like, certain components we inject into you. Even before then, it could just be like, hey, you've got fractures. Let's maybe inject some stuff and put some stuff around that fracture that'll make it heal faster. Like, just more options of not having to do a more intense surgery. Because especially on older folks, you know, like my mother's been in the hospital a couple times recently, and there was this kind of wait and see of the, like, are we going to do a surgery for this? It might resolve itself. Because she's old enough now, it's like we really don't want to do a surgery at all if we can help it, because of how much slower the recovery time is, like how much, like, time you're going to spend recovering, not moving, is going to make your muscles degenerate faster. And you're so old, it's hard to put muscle on. You know, it, like, becomes this big spiral of, like, okay, yeah, we could absolutely fix this, but are we going to do more damage fixing it because of all these other conditions? And I feel like technologies like this are really going to open up a lot of doors for people that are in those situations.
Yeah, I agree.
There's very likely, and I'm not a doctor, so maybe this isn't true, but to me, this article reads like it's very likely something like this is going to be so much less invasive that potentially, like, high-risk surgeries will no longer be high risk, and they're technically not surgeries at that point. They're a different medical procedure that I'm sure will have its own ups and downs, but, you know, it's another thing in the toolbox to help people.
And I think about this, and we already have some nanobots that we can inject into people, and they can do certain things like clean out plaque and stuff like that. They're a little bit less controlled than we would like for them to be, but as they improve, they could even, like, be a delivery system for these sorts of things, where you inject someone with nanobots, or they already have them in their system. When they get hurt, they just kind of go to work repairing stuff. So, like, between the, like, kind of two technologies, there may be, like, some sort of synergy there. I know they didn't say that in the article. It's just something I could kind of envision.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit I don't know really where the nanobot technology is right now, but I can see the train of thought that, like, hey, we're going to inject you with this stuff. We're going to use this ultrasound technology to make the rough of what we need. And then we'll have maybe little bots or something a little bit more intelligent or something we can control a little bit more finely to go in and maybe smooth things out.
Yeah.
You know, like, augment the process in some way.
Exactly. Or, you know, we had these things in your body doing this task, and we can reassign them to do this other task. And that's, you know, what's repairing your kidneys, or what's doing this, or what's doing that, or what's like kind of, and I mean, that's all like super sci-fi stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
We watch movies and it's like, yeah, they put the nanobots in him and he, you know, like, recovered. He had, you know, been shot or whatever. You see, like, Luke in the Bacta tank, you know, like in Star Wars. And I mean, miraculous healing things that we would think aren't possible are because of stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like that sort of thing that we're looking at, this future that seems so much more hopeful than, you know, a lot of us would like to think, you know, Star Trek kind of hopefulness.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that to a degree, because, you know, I know a lot of the talk of like nanobots and in-blood monitors and stuff became of this, like, fix you while you're out. And I know we're really far from that because of, like, hardware limitations. Like, these things are so small, you're not going to program them with much instruction. But the idea that at some point in the future there might be, just like you've got your intensive care units and your surgery rooms and stuff like that, there's some room for technologies like this where they're like, okay, boom, here's the material we're going to put in you. We're going to start sculpting. We're going to put these other little things in it that we can control with a computer, because you're never going to be more than, like, 10 feet from us. You know, we just use regular communication technologies to try and, like, tell these little things what to do. Or maybe they're all pre-programmed. They're single use.
Yeah.
You know, you've got little bots that know what to do for, like, very particular tasks. Because from what I understand, you a lot of them you filter out of your body pretty quickly. So, you know, little biodegradable, they only need to last like 12 hours or something like that to do a procedure, and they're gone. You know, I could see that. You know, it's still probably very far away in the grand scheme of seeing it in regular practice. But it's interesting that we're playing with those technologies.
Yeah, and then we're getting to a place where we're actually, like, talking about them as being viable and not just, like, theoretical. I agree. It's very interesting. Now, I don't have this as a topic, and I didn't put an article in, but I've been playing with Olama. Have you? Or we talked a little bit about like having our own hosted AI at home. Have you played around with any of the Olama?
I've not had a chance to play with them, but I am familiar with what they are.
So, I mean, basically, like if you have a Linux machine, it's just kind of a command line to install. And then it runs as a service, and so you can use it on that machine, or you can do some stuff to open it up as like a web page for you to attach to, or like connect it, over a port to an app, so then it becomes like a service you can consume.
Gotcha.
Add users to it, and then they can start doing stuff there. Now, the little machine that I'm using to do this on, it's this like Nook from 2018, 2017, I think.
Yeah,
Skull Canyon Nook, I think. And it's got a dedicated graphics card and stuff like that, and it's soldered on, but like it's a Radeon M graphics card, Vega graphics card from way back in the day before Radeon graphics were great. And what I have found is that there are some really interesting use cases that you can put something like this into. So like I've been kind of thinking around like maybe I want to start like a business, or maybe I want to do something. Help me do some research on that. So I've opened it up to the web and like gotten information and statistics from other things and kind of collated all that down through this, and then I can go back and like double check and stuff like that. But for the most part, using something like DeepSeek, I've got it's called an obliterated version of DeepSeek that doesn't have any restrictions on it, that I was able to get from Hugging Face.
Okay.
And so like I can ask questions about things that otherwise it might be like, well, the Chinese Communist Party doesn't like that, or our whatever. Not that I do too much of that, but like if I stray into some sort of territory where it thinks that I'm getting off the rails, it doesn't stop me.
Yeah.
It just continues to let me do the thing that I want to, and lets me determine if that's too far. Like it doesn't censor me, which I like. Now, could another person just rely on that to be the God's honest truth every time it returns an answer or something like that? Yeah. So I think that, it's not, things like this that are like kind of assistance aren't really for everyone.
Yeah.
But man, it's much more useful than, so even though it's not necessarily as fast and not necessarily as, I don't want to say accurate, because it's fairly accurate in terms of the information I'm getting back. It's really like speed and the way it returns back information to me.
Yeah.
It's not as interactive, I guess. Like, it doesn't talk to me like whenever I play around with something like, Gemini or something like that that's hosted by another, or ChatGPT or something. But I mean, if you're not running Olama, you can run it as a Windows service, you can run it as, Linux. If you're not running that at your own home, if you've got a graphics card, I mean, even like an older graphics card or a less powerful graphics card, if you're not running it on something, you're kind of missing out on like some of the awesome stuff that you can do. And here's the thing, using Tailscale or like some sort of like Cloudflare tunnel or something like that, which I've been playing around with a lot, you can just kind of connect to it anywhere in the world. So you've got like this encrypted tunnel that you can get back to your own, like, locally stored. You didn't train it, but it's your AI. You could upload your documents. Like if I need to reference something for a D&D thing that's like an obscure text in one of the old books, I can like go and do that.
Yeah.
But also, if I want to ask it questions like, what's the, blah, 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 give me a joke, or do this for me, or, tell me a story or something like that, I can load up Claude and get like some of those things on there if I want to. I don't have to be tied to like one model, and I'm also not paying someone for tokens.
Yeah.
I'm paying for my own energy, true, but some of this stuff, like, it runs on a potato. It doesn't like require a whole lot. It's not like the image generation.
Yeah, those Nooks are pretty low energy.
Yeah, and I mean it runs fine. It is slow. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't take like 3 or 4 minutes to return some sort of complex answer sometimes. But it returns really thorough answers. I would really love to see you. I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah. Okay.
Install this on one of your machines. Don't care what, just something that's got a graphics card in it. And, open up your graphics card. You might have to install CUDA if you've got an NVIDIA graphics card. If you've got AMD, you can do it on there pretty well too. And just see what you get out of it. See what you can use it for that's not, stupid stuff.
Yeah,
it's actually useful. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try it. We've got some time between this season and next. I'll give you some time to play around with it.
Yeah. And speaking of time between this season, well, not this season. We've got time between we're still in the same season, just between the...
Well, this is the next episode.
The next...
Oh, yeah. The mid-year break. I always think about it as like season part 1, season part 2. I don't know why.
There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't want to confuse the listeners. if we have anyone that's made it through to this point of my rambling about AI.
Again, this is why I don't do the scheduling. I show up, I drink beer, I talk. Maybe I read some articles if there's articles for that day, and you take care of the rest. I don't even know. You said it earlier. I'm not sure I even know what season this is. No, I do. It's season 8 and that's only because we have a little OneNote where you store what we're going to be talking about.
Yep. And that's at the beginning, every single one says season 8.
Yeah, but no, I don't read that part. I just know it's in the season 8 folder.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, so what do you think you're going to do with your AI?
Realistically, that's a great question. I don't know. I've had some success in the past using it as like a creative tool for like talk to me about like D&D campaign ideas and things like that. I've used them for cooking before, which that worked out pretty well. I do generally like the idea of an assistant that can just talk with me about things, because I do a lot of just like, oh, an idea popped in my head. Let me go Google that real quick and use that as like a jumping board. Because a lot of times the things I'm thinking about, it doesn't really matter what the answer is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, if I get a hallucinated answer, it's not going to affect my life. But it is I didn't have to spend some time researching that myself. The curiosity has been sated, so I can continue on with my life.
Okay, so maybe for recipes and probably for like some sort of assistant and maybe some creative project.
Yeah, just like a little daily assistant just to see how that goes.
Well, so where's my phone? Oh, there it is. I'll show you. You can install a app that is Olama Manager, and it basically just turns it into like ChatGPT.
Oh, nice. Yeah, see, that is actually exactly what I was going to try and install it on. It's like, let me go back and see if we can install this on Android. And then I'm going to have it on my phone, yeah.
So basically what you do is you install it on your desktop or your laptop or whatever it is. I mean, if you have like a little Mac Mini that's running like M4, supposedly it runs beautifully there.
Yeah.
You install it there, and then you take it and you open it up with there's a way to like open it up to where like the API is open to things outside of it, and you can either use a Docker container with a web portal, which has more features built into it. I really like the web portal. I'm playing with both of them. I've kind of turned the web portal into a app. They don't look that much different, but the web portal, that is not the same app that you're looking at right there. I know that like nobody can look at it, but you see that little globe icon right there? I've got plugins on the web portal app that allow me to search the web and stuff like that. And you can't do that with the like built-in Olama app. So like there's things that you can do with one versus the other, and I kind of like the web portal better. But start out and see what you like with the Olama app.
Yeah.
And it's like Olama Manager or something like that. But it is really interesting, even doing that, like what you can get. And you can get like really tiny ones. So like there's like Tiny Llama, and there's Llama 3 Obliterated is really cool. The DeepSeek R1 that I've been running has been really useful for like factual stuff. And I have like another one that's like creative, that's like a Llama 3 image generation like one, but I haven't gotten that one to work perfectly yet. But they're like, there's some ones that you can do like creative stuff, like, hey, write me a story about this.
Yeah.
Give it some information, and it'll write you something that's kind of interesting. Or write me a poem, and it'll write something that's kind of interesting, based off the parameters that you have, and then you can kind of like manipulate it down to whatever you want it to be.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I think we've been waiting on our beers to see what happens.
Yeah. Let's see. It's not bad warmer. I think I do like this one chilled better.
I prefer it chilled. One of the things with the warmer one, I've been drinking it as it's gotten warmer. It gets like this kind of thinness to it as it gets
exactly.
warmer.
Yeah, it gets a little bit sweeter, but it gets thinner.
Yeah,
and I don't like that. It's less complex, I think, when it's warm. The sweetness just kind of takes over a little bit.
Yeah, you don't get as much of the shortbread. The milk creaminess is still there, but like I said, it's thinner. It's not as like much of a mouthfeel as the other one. So, anyways, well, this has been Season 8, Episode 9 of the Beer and Broadband Podcast, slated to come out on June 9th, 2025. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.